Hey everyone, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ted, and today I'm joined by
Nerdarchist Dave.
And this time we're diving back into Critical Role Campaign 2, Episode 22.
I want to start this video by thanking our sponsor, Easy Roller Dice. Whether it's your first set of dice or your 1 millionth set of dice, Easy Roller Dice for all your dice rolling needs. Down in the description, you can find a link with a one-time coupon code as well to easyrollerdice.com/nerdarchy. Go get yourself some Easy Roller Dice.
Alright, so we're going back into Critical Role Campaign 2, Episode 22. And we got a lot going on, and most of it this time is combat.
Yeah, like you said, it started almost right away with combat. There was a little bit of stuff going on beforehand. Then we get into combat, and there's a ton of stuff going on. I mean, there was a couple interesting things that happened before the combat. There was a couple, like, one-on-one role-playing sessions that happened.
So Jester winds up, like, talking to Kiri and is trying to find out, like, how long the Kenku's memory is. How long can they use their vocalizations that they memorize. And, it's like, It takes some working to, but she winds up getting like, yeah, it's pretty much forever. So it's like, I am Kiri. I am Kitty. So like, Jester winds up working through some of those kind of things. So I thought that was a pretty cool scene for her. And as I said, before, I think Kiri is the awesomest piece right now.
Kiri is adorable, and it is really a lot of fun to see how Matt uses that NPC throughout the game. So I hope Kiri stays around for quite some time.
Well, he's had NPCs in Campaign 1 that stuck around for many sessions. So to me, there's nothing to say that won't happen.
Now, also, so some of the other interactions between the player characters is, Beau goes to Fjord about interpersonal skills.
Well, in last session, she pretty much went apeshit on Caleb for stealing the bull, even though it wasn't Caleb who took the bull, it was Nott.
I don't think that was the issue. I think the issue was Caleb didn't just hand it over and was like, no, we have to make sure we trust you first. And I think that was the issue. And he was like trying to, decide whether or not, Matt's character or Mark's character was worthy of receiving the bowl, and that she wasn't going to do something screwed up with it. And it also kind of was a character development moment for Cal. Go, oh well, although he says he's shitty and he's a shitty person, like really he's actually looking out for the betterment of society as a whole and people as a whole, or at the very minimum doesn't want it to bite them in the ass.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know you guys out there will, but I think Caleb was lawful good.
I don't even remember the alignments.
Yeah. I honestly think that he's trying to look out for everything that's going on, and honestly, it was a bowl that's meant to contact Tiamat. There is nothing good that's going to come from that. So I totally think that he was justified in saying, okay, so far, Callie has been pretty easy to read, but it's a sort, from a gamer's perspective, it's a sorcerer, which means high charisma, which means there's always the chance that person has really good persuasion and deception skills. And I know it's a gamist mindset, and not everybody gets into that. But it's highly possible that they've just been duped, and, Callie really wants it to take and use. He's already, she's already half dragon, from her sword. What is it, black, which is already chromatic and evil.
Yeah.
It's possible, and all it takes is just a little bit to convince that. Well, yep, she's bad.
So that being said, like there was a lot that went on there, but then Beau realizes perhaps she overreacted, and she goes to Fjord for some help with these interpersonal skills because she perceives him as being better at it. So that interplay is a lot of fun with them going back. But then, soon after that, they go on to watch, after they Cal lays the alarm, they're making their plans because they want to go over and attack more of those evil mer folk creatures.
Which we find out then is, Matt refers to them as Merrow. So we were wrong. They're not Sahagin or Sahagin.
Yeah, I guess for some reason I thought, I had thought that the Merrow had fishtails like a mermaid, right? And I could have just misheard how he described them, and they actually had, and they actually didn't have legs, and they were just in the ponds. So I might have just completely got that wrong. Very possible. But during that watch, Caleb and Yasha are on watch together. And they kind of have like a similar scene where Caleb is like, I'm really crappy with people, and you travel with the circus for a long time, and it seems like you might have had these problems too. And what do you do to come over them, combat them and get over them? And Yasha, gives some advice, and they go back and forth. So
and I always look at these things, and to me, I look at a small conversation at the table over a watch. That watch is probably a couple hours, so the conversation might only be 3 to 5 minutes, but to me, I'm like, that's hours as they go back and forth, that there's more bonding that winds up happening. And then Caleb gets into this weird thing where it's like, I haven't had a shave in a long time, and she winds up shaving him with her greatsword. Matt asks for a dexterity check. She winds up getting a 16. So, for the most part, she shaves his face
with a greatsword,
with a 5-foot-long blade. I'm like, doesn't anybody have a dagger?
Dude, this is like the second time in as many sessions where you were like, why are you doing this with a greatsword and not just pulling out a dagger? Something, a chisel, anything, a sharp spoon would have been better.
Again, the players are seasoned adventurers. They ran campaign 2 or campaign 1.
You mean the characters?
No, the players. They played campaign 1 for a long time. We are 22 weeks into session 2. They should have enough adventuring mentality to be like, well, most characters should have a healer's kit, a dagger, a variety of different things that are going to be useful at all times.
I don't know if actually playing D&D, though, makes the player a seasoned adventurer.
Well,
that's my thought. I wouldn't want to take my D&D knowledge and go out adventuring. All I'm saying.
All right. Wrong terminology. The player becomes a seasoned gamer, which means that they should know what their character should and should not have.
Yeah, I'll buy that for $1.
So the players wake up, and I think it was, Laura Jester, who wakes up and sees Yasha standing over top of Fjord, lying down, dragging her blade across his face, like, are you killing him? I thought that part was quite comical.
Yeah, and then from there, eventually we get to the point where a Merrow comes through that hole that they have the alarm spell on, and Caleb sends Frumpkin to investigate, which nearly costs him Frumpkin's life, which doesn't really matter. It's not like he hasn't been randomly killed by a guard before anyway, but he does dodge the trident.
But I do give credit here. Technically it's an action to dismiss the cat, and Matt allowed him to do it as a reaction. So I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so he saves Frumpkin from being dispelled so he can bring him back later. And, they end up unloading on that poor, unfortunate Merrow.
The Merrow sticks his head through, and despite the darkness and the disadvantage, they do enough damage in that surprise round to just drop him.
It's a lot of players hammering on one monster. From there they decide that, Caleb wants to leave his books here and not bring them into the water. Seems like a good idea. They decide that taking the baby Kenku or the young Kenku with them is probably not a good idea. And at some point, one of Jester's lessons really rubs off on Kiri, because she's like, "Hey, here's a phrase to say if ever someone tells you something you don't like." And Fjord is like, "Kiri, why don't you guard this hole and watch it?" And Kiri's like, fuck you. So she learned, and she proved not only did she understand and can she mimic these things, but she understands what they meant. And Fjord asked her to do something incredibly dangerous.
So I thought it was quite comical, all the things that wind up happening with Kiri with this particular episode. Not terrified of water. We still haven't exactly learned why. Chooses that she does not want to go and swim down and go to the the next area where all the loot is and the monsters are. She's like, well, somebody needs to stay here and protect Kiri, so I'm gonna do that. And I kind of thought that was, a bit amusing. It's like, well, we've got, message, so you can communicate if there's a problem. And I thought that was just, quite comical that they're going to go in and she's going to stay back there. So Nott winds up, casting, a spell to hide Kiri. And then sits there and just keeps drinking out of her canteen.
Yeah, well, she actually casts a spell before she leaves. They're both there kind of hiding. They hide Caleb's books and they're guarding them. Then they all go over there. The fight happens. Eventually, it's getting a little rough on the other side, so they send for Nott. And Nott does Denozo rolls, which Megan from our games will do occasionally as well, and that's to decide whether her character would actually do something or not. And Nott kept failing her own Denozo rolls, so she kept drinking until it seemed like a good idea to go help them.
So it was, I thought that part was pretty fun. Eventually, Nott does go to the other side, turns the tide, despite the number of times that the caster kept doing Call Lightning and it kept getting dispelled or failed his concentration rolls. It was a lot of back and forth. I will say that for GMs out there who do struggle with large parties and combat differences or combat challenges, Matt is really good at giving a good challenge by having combat where enemies can come in later, so that there's not a swarm of bad guys all at once that have the ability to bring down players. But, third, fourth turn, I'm going to bring in a new monster. Fifth turn, I'm going to bring in a new monster. Doing this allows the party to keep fighting without having all of the attacks coming at them every single round.
Yeah, he paces it really well. He manages the players really well. He does a good job of that. So after they overcome it, they discover all these crates and basically more loot.
More loot. So
there's a crate full of all kinds of religious iconography. There's symbols and idols and all kinds of stuff, and even a couple for the traveler.
And that was really you got to see the wide eyes of Laura on that one. It's like, what?
That's a good example of the DM going, I'm putting this in there for this player, and whether they were in there before she asked for them or not, who knows? But it was a good idea, in my opinion, when the player asked, the DM went yes and.
Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really cool. We wind up finding out that all of the religious symbols that are there, they have come from many different things. One of Yasha's wound up looking like it was attached to something of wood, maybe a chest or a crate or something, and it was removed because it still had the clamps and bits of wood pieces in it. But all of the religious symbols that were there are from
outlawed or not sanctioned by the Empire deities.
The sixth core religions, these weren't them, they were anything but. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Everything that fell outside of those six that the players asked for were there to some degree. Sometimes, it was only the two, sometimes it was like 4 to 6. So it was pretty cool that they all got some new holy symbols for the things that they cared about.
And then there was some other things, some chests of weapons and stuff. It was mundane stuff, just kind of like goods, basically trade goods, I think. Mm-hmm. Except for a couple specific items. And one, when Cal cast Detect Magic, one of the pools is glowing with magic, and then there was a box that was glowing with magic as well.
So inside the box was a sword that looked like it was made out of gold, and it looked really extravagant, and Caleb, he cast Identify on it. He's specifically handing it to
Mollymauk.
To Mollymauk, because let's face it.
Can we talk about Taliesin for a minute here? His hair wasn't colorful. It was shaved on the sides. What's going on? Who is this guy?
Well, if you're always wild and crazy, the wild and crazy becomes the norm. So Taliesin has to keep changing it up. So sometimes the norm becomes the crazy.
I gotcha. But in this case, Taliesin, even though in his more mundane form, has received the rapier that looks like it wouldn't be really good for combat, but it's very magical and it feels really balanced and really well. Summer's Dance.
So we're gonna get to see that in action probably next session. There wound up being some orb that before Caleb had his chance to identify it, Fjord kind of like just wanders over and he picks it up, and when he touches it, he winds up having these visions, and he envisions a ally from his past, a former captain of his, holding the orb and the falchion that he now wields, and he pushes it into his own abdomen, chest.
I also think he hears that phrase again too. Consume.
Yeah. So like he goes through that, and while he's seeing all of this happening, the other party members see him push it into his own chest. The armor's not damaged. They remove the armor. There's no damage to his skin, but the thing is indeed gone. When he said consume, I really thought Caleb was going to swallow it again this time. But
Fjord.
Fjord was going to swallow it again this time, but alas, that was not the case. Went inside him in a different manner, and lo and behold, at the end, the next time that he summons the sword, that orb is now part of his sword. So we don't specifically know what the orb does, but he's totally got this, weapon that's got the ability to consume other magic items and add its power to its own. They made some jokes about, Final Fantasy VII materia, which, I love that kind of stuff. If you played that game,
the Easter eggs. I do like the fact that Matt is letting him build out like his signature weapon, and it's not like, oh man, am I going to find another falchion that's better than the last one? And it's becoming very iconic, and it's themed towards what his character is and his patron. So that part is really cool. They also found one other item of interest, and that was the sword hilt with a broken blade on it.
Now, it didn't register as magical, but it also resisted the magic to be mended, and they did not find the other end. So it was definitely an item of interest, and I definitely think there's going to be more to it. To me, it kind of speaks to maybe it's a magic item to become later, or maybe it's something that's so powerful that it resists detect magic, and because it didn't radiate magic, maybe they just have to identify it, and lo and behold, it might be a thing, or maybe it's more powerful than that, and they gotta wait till they get legend lore.
Right, or reforge the blade, or maybe there's story things that happen. Who knows? We're going to find out. So I guess there's only one more thing I think that's really worthy of talking about from this episode. And that was, what kind of been led up to this. Now, I don't know if the players kind of planned for Beau and Fjord and Caleb and Yasha to have these breakout roleplay sessions for them to kind of build up around their awkwardness, so that they both do it, because it kind of feels a little sitcom-y, in a good way, and then have this scene at the end where Beau does actually try to, or does apologize to Caleb, and it's a touching scene, and it's kind of funny, and I was laughing a lot when they're doing it because of their annex, and like Beau delivers the apology, and then Caleb's like, I just hug her. Awkwardly. And then Beau like hugs back awkwardly, and they're both kind of like, what do we do?
Wow. And sorry for the spoilers, guys, but I mean they're out there, but like if you had watched campaign 1, like there's already a relationship between the players, and in campaign 1, and I haven't watched beyond episode 58 yet, but where I am in the story, those characters are in love. Liam's and Marisha's character. So like, they've already gone through relationships. So it's possible, like, this is like, dude, we got to go the other direction this time. We got to have like completely awkward relationship. So
Well, both of those characters are pretty much all cartoons to everybody anyway, though.
Well-
So it's different. It's interesting. But the question is, what do you guys think? Are you enjoying Critical Role? Are you enjoying these reviews we do of them and talks of them? We got a place where you can discuss that, and that is down in the comments below. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
while you're down there, don't forget to check the description and that link for Easy Roller Dice and use that promo code.
So until next time, stay nerdy.